This would be Monday, November 4th. Hopefully we have put in our what would you do, which would be the bell work, and we'll go through and get a chance to talk about it from there. So the idea being is if you were in this situation where the friend has given you an item and asked you to hold on to it, and we're talking here close BFF-y, then what would you do in this particular situation? Chloe? Oh no, I had to pick on someone. Way to be firsties.
So I have to read my answer?
Yes.
If I was in this situation, I would hold on to it, but first tell them they should return it. They won't feel comfortable using it, and they won't enjoy having it at all. I would also tell them they would probably get caught.
But you would hold on to it for them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you enjoy that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if they've told you that it's a stolen thing and you're holding on to it, you get in just as much trouble if you get caught. Because then it's holding on to stolen property. Evan?
I would tell my friend no. I don't want anybody getting criminal.
You know they're crying right there in the hallway, in tears.
That comes at the end.
That tears, no, while they're talking to you, they're right there crying, and you're like, what? No, you just throw your hand in their face and walk away. Okay, just checking. And you just be strong enough to do that? Okay. Keegan?
I would first say to them that they are not my friend anymore. Then I would not take the iPod. Next, I would walk away after I tied them to a chair and duct taped the chair to a locker. Finally, I would call the cops.
We have learned where you draw the line. Bella?
I would keep it, but while I would have it, I would go and return it
To where?
to where they stole
They
it
didn't
from.
tell you.
But
They just told you that she's going to go around to every store. You want an iPod
Well,
touch?
then they would think that you stole it.
well,
Yeah,
then, well, okay.
Shh, Bella just turned herself into the police.
I would tell my mom first
Okay.
because my mom's important.
She would tell me what to do.
So you would keep it
I would keep it
and
because
then tell your
it's my
parents that
best
you had stolen
friend.
property.
No, I would keep it and tell my mom that my friend stole it, and then I don't know.
Your
But
mom would
no,
knock you out of the
I know. She would like disown me.
So you've now turned yourself into the police and your parents have disowned you. Best bell work ever. So hum.
I would keep the iPods and tell T-shirt that they shop with the other items.
So you would turn in your friend by name?
Yes.
Okay.
Then I would tell who did it and give them the iPod. Afterwards, if they came to kill me, I would jump out the window and run home. Lastly,
That window?
I would
He could be in a different class.
Gotcha.
It's gonna be in Mrs. Randall's class.
Oh.
No, you're at your locker.
Patty?
But if you, hold on, when you automatically get in trouble, because they're obviously gonna like try to return it or something, because then they would know that you had it. Then you would
Who's
be
they?
arrested. The people.
People.
The police. The police.
The popos?
like the Pope.
Could be if they go in years every chance you'll get in trouble for it. Gabby?
I said that I would talk to her and I would tell her that I won't keep it, but she needs to return it without lying, and that she could get in huge trouble and go to jail if she doesn't, and that she needs to talk to her parents about it.
Wow. So what we have so far is dudes turn you in and laugh at you while you cry, and chicks will hold on to it. So anytime you
That's how I
steal
won't
something,
keep it.
give it to a girl, not a guy. Lamb.
Write that down. Okay, I would smack him in the face.
Uh-huh.
Then
While
I
they're
would
crying.
Then I would keep it for him.
Okay.
This is only because I owe my friend.
Because you smacked him?
No, I'm holding on to it because I owe him.
Oh, okay.
I feel this is a bad choice, but this is my best friend. I would tell him to go home and set it on fire.
Wait, are iPods flammable?
No.
I don't commit arson.
Well,
Well, if you set them on fire, yeah.
he's committing to poor choices. I think slapping a friend in the hallway was poor choice 1, and then holding on to it was poor choice 2, and then trying to burn the evidence. He was just trying to compile all the poor choices into one.
And I have not ever seen it.
With the story we'll go ahead and jump into with after 20 years. One of the drawbacks to the story, well, one, it's a good story. The drawback is O. Henry, the guy who wrote it. We're looking at the 20-year side, not the fun they had side, by the way. after 20 years is that the guy who wrote it read dictionaries for fun. He was jailed for poor choices, and then while he was in jail, he wrote his short stories. But while he was in jail, he spent some of his time reading a dictionary for fun. The drawback to reading a dictionary for fun, well, it was
Is
like
it
the
use smart
1920s, so give the guy a break. They didn't have a lot of books back then. Is that your vocabulary expands, and so he tends to use big, wordy words. Like he'll talk about walking down a Pacific thoroughfare. Pacific thoroughfare is a fancy way of saying quiet street. Pacific means peaceful, quiet. Thoroughfare means street. So as we get through it, don't get thrown off by the big words. You just sort of have to be strong and stick to it.
If that one's the one with the big waves and all the surfers.
Probably. So as we go through, let me see, I'm going to have you go down until probably the first 3 paragraphs. Yeah. We'll do those first 3 paragraphs. That'll give us our main character. At least we can get our character and setting down for this one to figure out what's going into it. So for after 20 years, go ahead and begin there. Figure out character and setting. Out loud, yeah.
The policeman on the beat moved up the avenue impressively. Impressiveness was habitual
Yeah.
and not for show. The spectators were few. The time was barely 10 o'clock at night, but chilly gusts of wind with a taste of rain in them had well nigh
De-peopled
the streets. Trying doors as he went, twirling his club with many intricate and artful movements, turning now and then to cast his watchful eye adown the Pacific thoroughfare. The officer, with his stalwart form and slight swagger, made a fine picture of a guardian of peace. The vicinity was one that kept early hours. Now and then you might see the lights of a cigar store or of an all-night lunch counter. But the majority of the doors belonged to business places that had long since been closed. And about midway of a certain block, the policeman suddenly slowed his walk. In the doorway of a darkened hardware store, a man leaned, an unlighted cigar in his mouth. As the policeman walked up to him, the man spoke up quickly.
And we're going to pause before we have the man speaking up quickly. So to begin, so far, Luke, we have introduced what seems to be the main character, or at least a character. And who's the character? A policeman. And then where is our story taking place, Scully?
On a quiet street.
On a quiet street. And so can you figure out what the policeman is doing on the quiet street as he's walking along? Yeah, he's basically just checking the doors, making sure they're locked. He's going just sort of walking along. He's got his little club, the billy club things. I'm spinning it around. Imagine a little 1920s thing going along. He's just walking down the street, doing his whistle, spinning a little club. Ooh, what time of day is the story taking place?
Nighttime.
Does it give you a time?
Well, 10 o'clock at night.
Does it tell you, can you tell what time of year it is from any of the information in there?
Maybe like spring.
Fall
Fall or spring, because it's like rainy.
Summer. So we have the rainy. Does it say anything about the temperature out, or is it
Well,
not?
it says it's windy.
It's kind of
Okay,
cold.
just kind of chilly gusts of wind. So sure, that works for me. You have the spring, fall-ish, walking along. The guy's checking everything. When all of a sudden, what does he find as he goes walking along? A dude just standing in one little doorway. So imagine you're walking along and you have the entrances to all of these stores along the city street, and all of a sudden you go by and there's just a guy sitting there. And he has an unlit cigar in his mouth, so it's just a darkened doorway with a guy just sitting in there with no light on him. And of course, being a cop, what's your first assumption? Yeah, you're like, hoodlum, because you've just found this guy just standing, which is why the guy speaks up quickly. But we'll figure out what the guy says when he speaks up quickly. So keep going from there, Scully. We'll give you like another 3 or so, 3 maybe 4. It's all right, officer.
It's all right, officer, he said.
Reassuringly.
I'm just waiting for a friend. It is an appointment made 20 years ago. Sounds a little funny to you, doesn't it? Well, I'll explain if you'd like to make certain it's all straight. About that long ago, there used to be a restaurant where the store stands, Big Joe Brady's restaurant. Until 5 years ago, said the policeman, it was torn down then. The man in the doorway struck a match and lit his cigar. The light
showed a pale, square-jawed face with keen eyes, and a little white scar near his right eyebrow. His tie tack was a large diamond, oddly set.
Pause for a moment. You guys know what a tie tack is?
No.
A tie tack is what you would use to keep your tie from flopping around. It was attaches your tie to your shirt. Yeah.
Is it like one of those like clippy thingies where you just like put it, slide it on the tie?
Like a safety pin?
Yeah, like that.
Like that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different. Mine's a tie clip, and a tie tack goes through the tie, and sort of like a button would attach to
like
it.
those gold things that we use to make like books and stuff.
Where you, something like that. Or if you can imagine, it's like an earring, but an earring for your tie. And what is his tie tack made of?
A diamond.
A big old fancy diamond. So he's got like a big old fancy diamond. So that'd be a tie tack, where it just sort of goes right in the middle, looking thing like that. All right, keep going, Scully.
20 years ago tonight, said the man, I dined here at Big Joe's Brady's with Jimmy Wells, my best chum and the finest chap in the world. He and I was raised here in New York, just like two brothers together. I was 18 and Jimmy was 20. The next morning, I was to start for the West to make my fortune. You couldn't have dragged Jimmy out of New York. He thought it was the only place on earth. Well, we agreed that night that we would meet here again exactly 20 years from that date and time. No matter what our conditions might be or from the distance we might have to come, we figured that in 20 years each of us ought to have our destiny worked out and our fortunes made, whenever they were going to be.
Alright, so we find out that the guy in the doorway claims he's not a hoodlum. What's his claim? That why has he been there this entire time if he's not a hood-English-ish kind of person? Brown?
Because he's waiting for his friend. He's been waiting for 20 years.
Nicely done. I mean, so they had 20 years ago, because what did this place used to be years in?
Joe Brady.
Yeah,
fat
what was
restaurant.
Big Joe Brady's? A
Restaurant.
used to be a restaurant. He's like, we ate here, now it's a hardware store, so we decided to meet here in 20 years, so I'm just waiting for my friend, and that's going to be it. And then for the description of the guy standing in there, does it say anything else beside the tie clip?
Oh yeah, it says
What does it
it
say?
says his face or it's like pale, the white scar.
There you go. It's a pale, white scar,
Keen eyes.
In a
smoking a cigar.
Square jaws.
Keen eyes.
Square jaws like he had a big
Keen
old
eyes.
like Superman in the cartoons, or Batman, they have like a big old jaw going for him, scarred on him, he's got the tie clip and things like that. Alright, so he says he has a legitimate reason for being there the entire time. We'll see how much we believe him as we keep going. Grant?
The square jaw like SpongeBob.
That's an extremely square jaw, but yes, that's more of a square overall body, but it works from there. Sounds pretty interesting, said the policeman. Rather a long time between meets, though, seems to me. Haven't you heard from your friends since you left? Well, yeah, for a time we corresponded, said the other. But after a year or two, we lost track of each other, you see. The West's a pretty big proposition. I kept hustling around over it pretty lively, but I know Jimmy will meet me here if he's alive, for he always was the truest, staunchest old chap in the world. He'll never forget. I came 1,000 miles to stand in this door tonight, and it's worth it if my old partner turns up. The waiting man pulled out a handsome watch, the lids of it set with small diamonds. 3 minutes to 10, he announced. It was exactly 10 o'clock when we parted here at the restaurant door. So, one more small thing. What does the guy pull out?
Diamond.
What do we know about the watch?
Diamonds. He's rich.
Yeah, so he's got the little pocket watch covered in the diamonds. So what are we picking up about him?
He's got that money.
Yeah, apparently he can make it rain. Oh wait, it's already raining. Never mind. This is super fast. Let's see. 10 minutes left. And see, there's the cop. Did pretty well out west, didn't you? Asked the policeman. You bet. I hope Jimmy has done half as well. He was kind of a plotter, though. Good fellow as he was. I've had to compete with some of the sharpest wits going to get my pile. A man gets in a groove in New York. It takes the West to put a razor edge on him. The policeman twirled his club, took a step or two. I'll be on my way. Hope your friend comes around all right. You going to call the time on him sharp? I should say not, said the other. I'll give him half an hour at least. If Jimmy's alive on Earth, he'll be here by that time. So long, officer. Good night, sir, said the policeman, passing on along his beat, trying doors as he went. Two things. When the cop asked him, are you going to call time on him sharp? Do you know what that means? Chloe?
Like when it turns 10 o'clock, are you going to leave or are you just going to stay here?
And what did the guy say?
He said, I'll give him at least half an hour.
My question is, why would the cop ask that question? Why does the cop want to know if he's going to call time sharp? Fauntleroy?
So he knows to leave or not.
Nicely done. So the cop's like, if you're going to be hanging out here all night, you're only going to be here for a little bit. And the guy's like, I'll give him a half hour. And that way if the cop comes around again, it's like 11:30 and the guy's still there, he's like, nah, it's getting suspicious. So that's why the guy's trying to find out. And when it says the cop was trying doors as he went, what it means? Keegan?
He's knocking on doors to see if anybody's there.
Yeah, he's going through and making sure like the stores didn't leave their doors unlocked and stuff like that. So he's just going along, giving little tugs. There was now a fine cold drizzle falling, and the wind had risen from its uncertain puffs into a steady blow. The few foot passengers astir in that quarter hurried dismally and silently along with coat collars turned high and pocketed hands. And in the door of the hardware store, the man who had come 1,000 miles to fill an appointment, uncertain almost to absurdity with the friend of his youth, smoked his cigar and waited. About 20 minutes he waited, and then a tall man in a long overcoat with collar turned up to his ears hurried across from the opposite side of the street and went directly to the waiting man. Is that you, Bob? He asked doubtfully. Is that you, Jimmy Wells? Cried the man in the door. Bless my heart! Exclaimed the new arrival, grasping both the other's hands with his own. It's Bob, sure as fate. I was certain I'd find you here if you were still in existence. Well, well, well. 20 years is a long time. The old gone, Bob. I wish it lasted. So we could have had another dinner there. How's the U.S. treated you, old man? Bully. It's given me everything I asked it for. You've changed lots, Jimmy. I never thought you were so tall, like 2 or 3 inches. Oh, I grew a bit after I was 20. Oh, I'm doing well in New York, Jimmy? Moderately. I have a position in one of the city departments. Come on, Bob. We'll go around to a place I know of and have a good long talk about old times. The two men started up the street, arm in arm. The man from the west, his egotism enlarged by success, was beginning to outline the history of his career. The other, submerged in his overcoat, listened with interest. At the corner stood a drugstore, brilliant with electric lights. When they came into this glare, each of them turned simultaneously to gaze upon the other's face. The man from the west stopped suddenly and released his arm. You're not Jimmy Wells, he snapped. 20 years is a long time, but not long enough to change a man's nose from a Roman to a pug. Sometimes changes a good man into a bad one, said the tall man. You've been under arrest for 10 minutes, Silky Bob. Chicago thinks you may have dropped over our way and wires us she wants to have a chat with you. Going quietly, are you? That's sensible. Now, before we go to the station, here's a note I was asked to hand you. You may read it here at the window. It's from Patrolman Wells. The man from the west unfolded the little piece of paper handed him. His hand was steady when he began to read, but it trembled a little by the time he finished. The note was rather short. Bob, I was at the appointed place on time. When you struck the match to light your cigar, I saw it was the face of the man wanted in Chicago. Somehow I couldn't do it myself. So I went around and got a plainclothes man to do the job. Jimmy.
Oh, he's the policeman.
So we find out Jimmy Wells was actually who? The policeman the entire time. The problem is, if that was the friend that had been waiting, why didn't he speak up when he found out that was his friend in the doorway?
Because he's wanted in Chicago.
And what is Jimmy?
A cop.
A cop. So he finds out that's how Jimmy was able to be in that area because he's a patrolman in that spot. And so he came around and was like, hey, I can go ahead and on my job check the door. But then, remember when he first came up there, Bob was standing in the doorway with nothing going on, and it's all dark, and he lights up his cigar right away as soon as the cop stops to talk to him. And that was before you go back to that very first column. All Jimmy gets to say is, yeah, until 5 years ago, it was torn down then. So Jimmy, still thinking he's being friendly, and is getting ready to say, hey, it's me. All of a sudden, Bob lights up his cigar, and he realizes that face is the face that they sent him from Chicago saying, keep an eye out for this guy. Apparently, we can guess what it is Bob does. And what would be our guess as to what?
Steals diamonds.
Be my guess. Steals diamonds, maybe a gangster, something like that, some kind of criminal, and Chicago's come looking for him. Now, The plainclothesman. Do you guys know what a plainclothesman is? When he says, I had to go get one to come after you? Patty?
Like a pedestrian?
Close, but not
Oh,
quite.
like an undercover police.
There you go. In undercover. Because it wouldn't do any good to have an actual cop locking up. So that's why now, going back, what was the last question that the patrolman asked before leaving?
What time are you gonna be there? Or how long are you gonna wait?
Nicely done. Now that has a whole new meaning. Why did the patrolman ask, how long are you going to be here? Gabby?
So that he could get someone to go in time.
Nicely done. Because if Bob had said, well, I'm leaving in just a few minutes, what would Jimmy have had to do?
Get him himself.
Might have rested himself. And then if he said, no, I'm going to give you about a half hour, that gives Jimmy time to take off running and go find another cop and send the other cop back there to go do it. So that was the whole thing, him trying to ask about the calling time. The two things that he notices when Bob turns and looks at him, what is it that Bob notices is different about new Jimmy?
His nose.
One is his nose, the other is he's taller. The nose is the difference between the two, a Roman nose and a pug nose. A Roman nose, I'm going to have you hit that other light just for a moment, is a nose that sort of bows outward. If you'll see there, it's called a Roman nose. And then a pug nose is one that sort of has a little, it curves the other way and has like a little, turns up at the end. So that's why he's like, you had a Roman nose when I knew you before, now you have a pug nose. There's like no way that your nose goes just naturally. So that's why Bob realized it was not the same person. They throw down, have a good time. Oh, that was fun stuff. And, ooh, we had little clues in the story to help us figure things out. Like you had the pocket watch that had all the diamonds on it, and you had the scar on the guy's face, and you have the tie clip. What do we call these clues in the story that are supposed to help you figure things out? Foreshadowing. Oh, the green sheet, we need to fill in the foreshadowing. There's our foreshadowing to start figuring things out as it gives us little clues in the story. So, to go through and not having to write this down, but just in your head, 3 characters we have in the story. What would be our 3 characters we have in the story? Socks?
Jimmy,
Yes?
Bob,
Yes?
and the undercover cop.
Works for me. So you have Jimmy Wells, Silky Bob, and then the undercover cop. How would you guys describe Jimmy? Grant?
A cop who found out his best friend is a gangster.
Works for me. Policeman, I put who works in New York City, but that works for me. We find out it's in New York City when Bob keeps referencing it. Evan? You want to describe Silky Bob?
Yeah, he's a diamond thief.
Works for me. Some kind of criminal who's scarred, find out he's from Chicago. And then the undercover cop, we don't know too much about him. AK?
He's kind of clever and can do he's brave, go catch.
Works for me. Go out there and do it. I put the friend of Jimmy, but that works for me. Who goes brave, who goes after him. For the setting, we have the when and the where. When is our story taking place that we know in there? Raleigh?
Spring.
Why do you say spring?
In spring.
Works for me because we know it's going to be the rainy, so I can do that. And what other when do we know besides that one? Gabby?
I was going to say fall, winter, close to winter.
Because of the cold rain?
Yeah.
That works for me. And we also know one other when.
Oh, well, I was just going to say plus he was wearing a big coat or something.
You talk to them, right? So definitely, and we know it's in New York City. They have normal-ish weather, so that should get it kind of close. TW?
Nighttime.
Why do you say that?
Because it's like a dark alley thing.
Works for me. That usually the alley, also past, nighttime, New York City, so we know they're on the streets. The backside of this, where I had the fun they had, that's the one you're going to need to read for Friday. And we're going to give you guys the week to read it, but you're going to have questions from that on the quiz on Friday. Tomorrow, bring your big book. You're going to need it for the story we're going to get into, and we have homework due.